She said that American soccer fans, most of them aren't smart. They don't know the game. They don't understand.
Gio.
That guy Gazpacho.
Sports can take a lame gorilla, okay?
Advice, did you know that Arsenal died?
These got me buzzing.
Up the topies. It's hard to up them anyway.
I'm not even gonna comment on that.
Welcome back to Footy with the boys. We have a big episode today. A U.S. men's national team preview. You gotta love it, playing against Jamaica in Kingston, as well as back home in St. Louis. We'll get you ready for that with the new roster, as well as, of course, a review of what happened for both Arsenal and Everton this weekend. Let's start, boys, with the big news. The U.S. men's national team dropping their roster awfully late here on a Sunday, the same day that some of these players were arriving in Orlando before they head down to Kingston, Jamaica. Let's run through it here, boys. In goal, we have the young keeper out of Barcelona, Diego Cochen, Patrick Schulte from the Columbus Crew, Zach Steffen getting another shout here. We'll talk about that, and Matt Turner as well being brought back in. The defenders, we have Mark McKenzie, Tim Ream coming back, Chris Richards making his return from injury. He also was back on the bench for Crystal Palace in the weekend. Anthony Robinson, of course, Miles Robinson, Joe Scally, and Austin Trusty. Certainly some questions we'll talk about there. In the midfield, Brendan Aronson, Gianluca Busio, Johnny Cardoso makes his return to the national team here. Weston McKennie certainly will play a big role in this one. Aidan Morris returns, Yunus Musa, Tanner Tessman, and Malik Tillman. And finally, the forwards, where there's certainly some interesting options here. Starting with Cade Cowell, making a return to the national team here. Ricardo Pepi joining, Christian Pulisic, of course, Brandon Vasquez, 2 straight camps now, Tim Weah, a return from injury, and then Alejandro Zendejas also joining in. My biggest name that surprised you to see here on the roster?
Ooh, biggest surprise. Probably one of the forwards, Zendejas or Vasquez. I know we're a little strapped on options, but neither of them looked great last camp. Zendejas looked better than Vasquez. One of those two, or one of the midfielders, Morris or Busio.
Yeah. Nick, we get kind of a lot of the people that we wanted to see back. We have a Johnny Cardoso. We have I guess was technically in the last camp, just couldn't really play. You have the Tim Weah back. You have Chris Richards, I guess technically back, hasn't really played for Crystal Palace, so I'm not sure. But we certainly did want to see Tyler Adams, who's got the start for Bournemouth. Do you like being a little bit more careful with him given his injury situation of the past? Or would you have wanted to say, hey, we're bringing everybody else back in, let's bring in Tyler Adams as well?
No, I don't like the move at all. I think you have to bring him back in. We talked about it. We want a competitive camp. And just because you bring him into the camp doesn't mean he's playing 180 minutes. You can play him 60 minutes out of 180 if you really want to. But he's a leader. I think he needs to reestablish himself as that. He obviously hasn't been part of the team for a while because of the injury situation. So I would have liked to see him there. Especially, I am completely unconvinced by Aidan Morris. I like Busio, but I don't think he's at the level. So I think there's space for him, and I think it's a missed opportunity.
Yeah, and Mike, I think the argument against Tyler Adams coming is we've seen this exact same show before. He comes back from injury, he's played in a few games, played a few minutes, got a start, and then he comes into the national team, and he doesn't know how to kind of turn down that motor. And against CONCACAF teams who are going to be really playing chippy, it might not be the greatest field in Kingston, Jamaica. Is it saving him from himself? I mean, Pochettino in the press conference said that he loves Tyler Adams. He knows his role in this squad. He doesn't need to bring him in just to get him in front of him. He said that he knows his role. He tried to get him at Chelsea before the board decided on going for both Romeo Lavia and Moises Caicedo. So a wild move there by Chelsea. But that Pochettino loves Tyler Adams, knows his role, and that he's going to be a big player here. Seems like Pulisic was obviously that kind of name written in pen. Seems like Tyler Adams to Pochettino is another one of those. Is that something that you say, hey, listen, if it were anyone else, bring him in? But with Tyler Adams' injury history in basically the same exact way of bringing him in after an injury, you like being more cautious, or are you in the same boat as Nick?
Usually I'd agree with Nick. But anybody who watches American soccer, the U.S. men's national team, knows how important Tyler Adams is. Him missing this camp is not going to change that. Poach is well aware based on what he said. I think being cautious, especially with the amount of times we've seen him come back from injury and then go right back into the infirmary. I mean, you have to be cautious with this guy. He's going to give 100% every time he's on the field, even if that's 45 minutes. It's a risk. He's finding good form at Bournemouth. Don't mess that up. I think leaving him home this time around, it's an okay thing.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think maybe if there's another week where he gets another bit of fitness in, you can make the argument for flying him across the world and playing. But I also think away in Jamaica, coming right back off of a back injury and hamstring, those are two pretty serious things, not normal knocks. But Tyler Adams not in the camp. There are some names in camp that have a lot of people somewhat scratching their head. One of that being a lot of center backs, only 2 outside backs in both Jedi Robinson and Joe Scally. He said that, other players can play outside back. You can see a Yunus Musa who played somewhat of a right back type role against Real Madrid and helping out on Vinny. You had Tim Weah who's played right back. And honestly, there's not really that many other options. Do you take any type of exception or worry about Pochettino's selection there, that he doesn't take any more outside backs here, Nick?
Yes, and then you think about who can he bring? Lund wasn't too convincing. I don't know. I think what's the name of the kid who's in Belgium right now or something? Wiley, Caleb Wiley is in Belgium, France.
Oh, in France,
yeah,
in
France,
Strasbourg.
yep.
France, yeah, Strasbourg. Fossey too. I mean, none of them are that convincing. I am interested to see if it does mean it's more of a 3-back, but I think logic might just say we know who our outside backs are. We don't know who our center backs are. Let's give them all a shot. So it's weird for sure. We talked about it in the group chat a bit, but I think it'll be okay. That's not the position I'm zoning in on if I'm watching the USMNT, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think the biggest thing is that you have the main players. You're starting 11 of this roster. You have a lot of players back, like a Cardoso, like a Pulisic, who was obviously gone for the Mexico game, Wes McKennie, Tim Weah. I mean, the options are there for the starting 11. It is those fringe players that you get a little bit more conversation on, and certainly there's some conversation here because, Mike, I mean, we have Zendejas, who he showed some fight in the Mexico game, but is that really what you want to be the determining factor? You have Cade Cowell, who had a pretty decent Mexican league season in Liga MX, but same as Vasquez, who, I mean, he made a decent touch and looked lively in the Mexico game when everybody looked kind of shit. And is that enough? Lucio and Morris also kind of finding their way in here after what I would say is a disappointing camp overall for them last time. Is this the best roster he could have made around the fringes, or do we feel that maybe you do bring in that Inter Tyler Adams? Haji Wright is injured, so that kind of hurts some depth up top, but you do have a Cole Campbell who's getting about 20 minutes every single game in the Champions League, in the Bundesliga for Borussia Dortmund. If they're trusting him, is that not above maybe a Liga MX player like Zendejas and Cade Cowell and even Paxton Aronson, who's on the second best team in the Eredivisie, scoring goals in consecutive games and kind of the engine of that team? Or do you think they feel snubbed, Cole Campbell and Paxton Aronson, that these Liga MX players are kind of getting in above them, Mike?
I don't know about snub. Cole Campbell is a tricky one because he's so young and really just started emerging like the last couple of weeks for Dortmund. So I can see that one. I think Paxton Aronson had more of a shout. I've been kind of keeping tabs on him as well. he's been playing really well. He's in a competitive league. We made that comparison between Eredivisie and Championship. What's the fall off? What's the difference? Especially with the Gameckis, it's higher. So I think he deserved a real shout. Zendejas maybe getting rewarded because he did show fight in the Mexico game, was maybe the only player who had any sort of positive impact. Brandon Vasquez, similar kind of situation. Maybe he feels like they deserve another shout. And then young guys like Busio and Morris, who didn't look great, really looked awful actually in the last camp. Maybe he wants to try them out in more of a substitute or with a stronger, more senior player next to him in the midfield. None of them are too aggrieving to me, especially with the guys who I would put in this team still being out injured. I'm willing to look past most of that.
Yeah. And one shot I think you can definitely make is Diego Luna had 20 goal contributions in the MLS, just won the Young Player of the Year in MLS. Nick, he wasn't really given a shot in the Olympic team, not given a shot with Greg Berhalter in the senior team, now not really given a shot here in a national team that is kind of battered and bruised on the fringe, is where he might be. Is it just not meant to be for Diego Luna in this national team? I mean, he's a player that I think could be a difference maker. He's a different type of player and makes things happen point blank.
Yeah, I mean, it could. I think he's a player that. Again, I haven't watched a ton of him, so from what I've seen of him, I think he's a player that like should be the main man on the team, and he's never going to be that in a national team level. And so, if you're kind of not the main creator, then what are you offering? You know, I don't know. That's a difficult one for me. I'm not going to pretend to know, act like I know too much about him. But I guess it's just not their cup of tea. I mean, clearly he hasn't been called in for anything, not even the Olympics, as you mentioned. So, Moon Boy will not be getting the chance with the U.S. men's national team this upcoming window, and I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, if I'm being super honest.
I like January camp when it's all MLS, but once again, he's going to be making probably a move over to Europe, and that might stand in the way of that as well. So, I mean, with the options we've had at the 10, which look great in club but not performing, and could certainly use another look here. Let's get a little bit more micro here. Look at the first game in Kingston, Jamaica, and preview it here, boys. We're away from home in CONCACAF. That's not been good news for the U.S. in, I guess, ever, really. The U.S. away in CONCACAF is pretty pitiful. This time in Kingston, Jamaica. Last time we were there, Timo Weah scored a left-footed goal, and I think Mikel Antonio got the leveler to a 1-1 game there. Boys, what should be the starting 11, and how should Mauricio Pochettino approach this game? Because it is away. You have a second leg at home. Are you going in there kind of waiting, say, hey, let's get back to a better pitch at home and not take too many chances, not allow too many fast breaks? Because they have Leon Bailey back in the Jamaican national team for the first time in a year. They have Jamari Gray. They won't have Antonio for this first game due to yellow card accumulation, but they got some burners. They've got some players that can certainly make a difference in this one. How do you want to see Poch approach this game, Mike? Does he just instill his strategy, or does he maybe take a more pragmatic approach to an away game in CONCACAF?
I think a combo. You have to take the pitch into account for sure in these away CONCACAF games. So high possession is maybe not feasible, depending on how the field's looking. But I do want to see him instill some of the tactics, especially that 3-back in possession, where we get the shift, we get a more advanced Anthony Robinson, most likely. That was promising. I do like to see that. I want to see him stick with a double pivot, and hopefully Johnny Cardoso's the starter there in one of those positions. He's looked really good for Betis recently. Wasn't in that camp for injury last time. I think that's a successful tactic. And then up top, I think the front three take care of themselves. So not a whole lot of choices.
Yeah. So Nick, I mean, we've seen Musa out wide. Is that something you want to see continued here? Do you want to see McKennie at the 10? I know we've had conversations about that. Malik Tillman has looked good recently, but also hasn't performed for the U.S. Do you give him another shot? Where are you going with really the midfield with Musa, McKennie, Tillman, and Johnny Cardoso? Whatever you want to do there, and whoever you want to throw into the midfield.
I'm pretty interested to see if Brendel's going to get another shot. I think that's a player that Poch inherently likes. Like he likes his profile, but I don't think he's of the level. So kind of hoping he drops him just based off the last camp. And if he does give him a chance, then we need him to take it because we can't just be feeding guys just because you like the profile. If it's not performing, bench his ass. So I'm gonna be interested there. But I agree with Mike. I'm looking at our strongest 11, and I don't think the squad right now is super deep to adapt based on home or away or what kind of pitch we have. I think whoever your best players are, put them out there and then set up the game plan however you need to with those players. Really hoping that McKennie's form travels through. I want to see him in a more advanced role. Musa and Cardoso in the pivot is really what we need. So yeah, I think if that midfield is what starts, I think I'll feel pretty confident. If people are kind of out of place, if we're trying a new system, even the 3-back I don't totally love right now, so I'll feel a little bit nervous for the away leg, but we'll see. I'm hoping he goes full strength. I think Mike's right. It's gonna be way up, Pulisic and Pepe up top.
Way is out. Way is out for this game.
Oh, he's not
First
playing.
game.
Oh,
He's suspended still.
Oh, suspended.
Yep.
oh, never mind
So
then.
we have to make a
Then I
decision
don't
with
know.
Aronson, Tillman, Kate
Oh
Cow.
God, I'm so sick of Tillman. Honestly, he's done nothing for us. Like I like his profile a lot, but he's done nothing. So I don't know. Put Aronson on the wing then, I guess. Put Zendejas because he tried so hard against Mexico. Who cares?
I wonder if we see. I mean, Musa played his best game of the season, but I mean, best game of his career maybe against Real Madrid in the Bernabeu. A hell of a performance, and he played it at that right mid spot where he was able to shift in a bit, also provide some defensive help on the outside, which I'm sure Joe Scally might need against some of these wingers for Jamaica that have that pace and have that technical dribbling ability. Do you see maybe Musa in that right mid type role? You see maybe Johnny Cardoso, Weston McKennie, and then Malik Tillman at the 10, or replace Malik Tillman with Brendan Aronson, one of those two at the 10. Because I do worry somewhat of if McKennie is the 10, I think he's better at that late arriving player. And Juventus has a lot of players that can create kind of wings and things like that. But if it's all down on Pulisic to create, and you don't have the 10 in McKennie that is a super creative player, does it stall in terms of offense for the US? Is that a fair approach? Do you want to see Musa out wide, or do you say, fuck, get done with that? It was for confidence and move him back inside.
Didn't you just say how like it might be a more direct game plan? So maybe that works if we're on a shittier pitch. I like McKennie at the 10 still. And again, if you're going to start a guy like Aronson or even Cade Cowell, they can create off the wing. Weah's more of a direct winger, and I would argue he's the only one we have on the squad. And still our best winger, not named Pulisic, but I don't know. I really want to see this McKennie experiment and see if he can like play to his strengths. I know we talked about this in the last pod, but if he can get McKennie at the 10, not being the main creator, but like making those secondary runs, I think we see a really strong McKennie.
Yeah. Is it, Mike, is it crazy to think that maybe Cade Cowell would be the best option on one of the wings just because we've seen at every level, basically, he's just a physical beast where if the pitch isn't great, you just send a fucking ball over the top and he's going to outpace whoever's there, and he's also going to be able to body off some people from the ball, and if he gets crosses in and McKennie's running in late, that's dangerous. Or if people are crossing it in and he's running in late, he's also shown he's a aerial threat. Is it crazy to say that maybe he should be in over an Aronson, over a Malik Tillman? Or is that maybe just overconfidence in his physical ability?
It's hard to say. I don't watch a whole lot of Cade Cowell play, but he hasn't really had a real shot in the senior setup. So I don't think it is crazy to say. There's not a clear starter at right wing with Weah being out. Most of them are either plug and play or dudes who are not in really great form for us. I think testing out Cowell would be fine there, and then just kind of overloading the left side when we see Anthony make that run behind Pulisic. Pulisic connects with McKennie. It's just heavy overload on the left side, balls coming into the box, direct style of play, at least in the first leg. Maybe change it up when Weah is back in the second. Cowell's fine. Give him a look if you're trying somebody out at the right.
Yeah, I'm certainly excited to see how Pochettino goes about this with kind of those A+ type players here, rather than the people that were there last time, kind of subbing in for injury. Second leg in the US will certainly be a good sign of exactly what he wants to do on a home environment, good pitch, everything you're kind of looking for, and see how that pulls out. But big game in Kingston, Jamaica to watch first. Make sure to keep it here on the channel. We'll have reaction and everything to that game. Let's get into the Premier League, and we start with Liverpool versus Villa at home. And I mean, boys, we said if this would be a test for Liverpool and for Villa and see what it would mean. Liverpool have the lead on the table, and they continued it. A 2-0 win here against Aston Villa. Nick, are they securely title favorites at this point?
Yes. What's the point differential right now? How many points are they at?
They are at
up 5 and up 9 on Arsenal. I want to be hearing these same monumental collapse talks that people always bring up about Arsenal, and Liverpool's in the lead now, and they're the best team in the world. So yes, they're the clear title favorites. And let's see what happens when they start playing real teams. Not that Villa's fake.
Yeah, this was kind of the real team talk of can they do it?
Dude, but did you watch this game?
Yeah,
Villa played horrible. Like, they were so
Villa,
open
though.
the entire time. Yeah, but then why would they play Arsenal? They're just like the most organized and counter-attacking fluid team you've ever seen in your life. Like, what is going on?
Unai. He has a personal vendetta.
Seriously, apparently.
Yeah. I mean, the gap that they've opened up on both City, 5 points, and certainly on Arsenal, they're going to have to really choke it. 5 points isn't too crazy from City, but 9 points on Arsenal is certainly something that they would have to really mess up and really have to run for them to make that back up. But another reason why they're 5 points up on Man City is that Manchester City lost to Fabian Hurtzler, Houston-born Fabian Hurtzler, and Brighton to 2 late goals. Boys, this is the first time in Pep Guardiola's career he has lost 4 games in a row. Mike, is this maybe showing that Rodri is that important for Man City? We kind of saw it a little bit last season where that was where their slips in form came, but they seemed like they were humming at the start of the season. Rodri goes out injured, and all of a sudden there seems to be some kind of hurdles that they're tripping over here.
Definitely. It's a combination of two things, a Rodri problem and then the tactical problem that goes with not having Rodri. They're trying to play Kovacic there at a deep playing midfielder, and with that really high line, and they're getting exposed. I've watched a good amount of this game. Brighton had lots of chances. I thought this was going to be another game that Man City somehow scrapes out a 1-0 because Brighton were just not clinical. And then eventually they found the goals. They could have had 2, 3, 4 more. Danny Welbeck was in a few times, forced Ederson into a few saves. They were kind of getting ripped throughout moments in this game. Definitely shows they're missing a real defensive midfielder. It's hard to replace Rodri. Totally get that. He's maybe the best in the world. Definitely the best in his position. And they don't have anybody currently to fill that role. I don't like their center back options either. I'll be real honest. They tried that new guy out, Pousse. No jokes, please.
Whoa. Sorry, who? What the hell?
The 19-year-old. I'm sure he's a good player. It's just an unfortunate last name. He did not look up to part. João Pedro comes on, instantly changes the game. A lot of talent in that Brighton team, but Man City certainly look feeble at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, we've been harsh on Arsenal in the past of injuries, and you just got to go with what you're dealt throughout the season. And I think Man City are getting a little dose of that themselves here. Is you have Rodri out, you have to find a way to adapt. There's no easy way out or saying, oh, well, they don't have Rodri, so that's why. It's points lost, and this is a big loss here because it does open that gap for Liverpool to get a little away, and it prevents them from being up there with Liverpool and leaving Arsenal behind by even. It's a tough one. 2 losses in a row in the Premier League for Manchester City. Maybe not as bad as Ipswich Town beating Tottenham. Mike, Palmer, you guys both called this. You guys said that it'd be an Ipswich Town win because it'd be the most Spursy thing ever. to beat Aston Villa, beat Manchester City, and then go in and lose to Ipswich Town for their first win in the Premier League. Hats off to them. I mean, Tottenham. It's on brand, but god damn. Every time there's a chance for you to be Spursy, it comes out Spursy as hell. Speaking of Spursy, Inter Miami also with some tough results, dropping out of the first round of the MLS playoffs to Atlanta United, an Atlanta United team that doesn't even have a coach. They're on an interim coach because they fired their coach. And they beat Messi and Suarez, and I know Busquets was out for it, but my goodness. And then Jordi Alba comes out after the game saying it's unfair. Brother, come on. You have 3 games against Atlanta United, and you're losing 2 of them to a 40-year-old Brad Guzan? Not a good look
Shout
for
out
Messi
Brad Guzan.
and company. Yeah, shout out Brad Guzan.
Standing on business.
The bald-headed genius over there in Atlanta. 40 years old. Maybe we need him back. A 40-year-old in net for the U.S. men's national team. He is the future. Boys, let's move forward to our teams, and we have foreshadowed it a little bit here. The gap for Arsenal against Liverpool in this title race is increasing. That is due to a 1-1 draw against Chelsea, a goal by Pedro Neto that was followed by just about every celebration he could possibly think of under the sun on that equalizer. Arsenal, once again, dropping points here. Nick, I thought it was a decent performance by by Arsenal here. Still a draw, dropping points.
Definitely not by Everton.
Needed a bounce back win here in a big game. What are you seeing from Arsenal? It's kind of dropping them back. You have 1 win in the last 5 here and dropped down to 4th here in the table.
Yeah, I think this is not me agreeing with certain narratives online or anything, but I do think the main problem these past couple, I don't know, how long has Odegaard been out? Since August, so 8 weeks maybe, 6-7 weeks. I think the main problem has been Arteta's team selection. I think he is being far too loyal to the guys that don't really you don't have to show immense loyalty to Leo Trossard. He is a very solid, good squad player, and he can change games occasionally. But when you have other options, you can use those other options. And I feel like right now, the midfield today, we had a mostly full strength team back today for the first time in a while. A lot of guys playing hobbled, but at least they were available. And he goes out with 2 6s in the midfield, and Odegaard was our best player. He created more chances than anyone. In fact, double the amount of chances as anyone else on that game. 4 big chances created. But it just doesn't work. And then the second you see Marino come into the midfield, everything just fits a little bit better. He seems to be trying to put, what is it called? Square pegs into round holes. And I get it. You trust your guys when the going gets tough, but also if you have players in an Arsenal squad, even if they're young, like an Ethan Nwaneri or Miles Lewis-Skelly, even if they're new, like a Mikel Merino, if they're in your squad, you have to trust them. And if you don't, then they shouldn't be there, or you should hang on to other players that you sold. I think ultimately a lot of this performance has been on him. They looked a lot better in the second half. Didn't look great in the first half. Pedro Neto is a complete scumbag, but pretty good player. I feel like he is so annoying to watch play against your team, but he is definitely good. At the end of the day, we are 4th in the league. In our first 11 games, we played City away, Tottenham away, Villa away, Chelsea away, Newcastle away. 5 games in our first 11 have been against, you can argue, the top 6 teams in their home grounds, in their respective home grounds. So I don't think it's a horrible position to be in. A lot of football to be left to play. And 2 of those other games, you were brought down to 10 men with a red card. So the context is there. It makes me feel a lot better that it's Liverpool with 28 points instead of City with 28 points. City, like you said, are floundering. I'm not as pessimistic as maybe I should be, as maybe the table says we should be. Because at least for the last 40 minutes of that game, we did seem to go back to Arsenal. And we were dominating that game. So, yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm at. I think we are in a good spot to turn it around after this international break, and every game's a must win now, which they usually are anyways in a title race, but even more so. So let's just show up, let's dominate the way we can, and I think we'll be in an okay spot.
Are you confident that Arsenal can make up? I mean, it's a 9-point lead, and we've talked about the margins. We've talked about Mikel Arteta and his
Yeah, but
decisions. Can they
I
make it
think
up?
the margins aren't as tight this year because I don't think City is the same team without Rodri. So I don't think it's as big of a deal. I mean, maybe we go on some insane run of form and we end up falling short because we were 9 points off the top in October. But do I think it's doable? Yeah, I actually do think it's doable given where the Premier League is at. I don't totally trust this Arne Slot Liverpool. They didn't look great against us, even though they stole a draw. I don't know. I'm not too concerned, I guess. I think there's definitely real concern, but if you're asking me like if I'm hitting the panic button on the title's gone, I'm not. I'm not hitting that panic button.
Yeah, I
Four-
think it
four
does
teams
make
at 19,
any
by the way.
game now. What was that?
4 teams at 19, by the way.
Yeah, including Nottingham Forest. Good for them. But
Hell yeah.
certainly think that next Arsenal Liverpool game is an absolute must win. That needs to be a 6-point swing for Arsenal, or else I do think it's looking grim there. But
Yeah,
kinda,
but if Liverpool lose 2 of their next 5 games and Arsenal win all, like it's a 3-point. There's a lot of soccer left to be played.
yeah, a lot of ball game left. I do want to, before we move to Everton here, you talked about Arteta kind of being loyal to his guys. That does seem a little odd because the reason Arteta had a lot of successes was he was trusting a lot of young players when he came and started kind of putting them on the right direction. Saka, Martinelli. He now has a player like Unwary, and he doesn't seem to trust him as much. He seems to be going to the Trossards, and even Raheem Sterling's off the bench, and Gabi Jesus is that maybe the issue, that he has gotten away from kind of shaking things up a bit?
Look, I'm not saying he has to start 17-year-old Ethan Wyneri week in, week out, but if for 3 weeks in a row we're having trouble creating, yeah, give the kid a shot when he looks like your best player every time he plays, and
Yeah.
obviously Odegaard was back this game, so Wyneri wasn't going to see the pitch, but I get Declan Rice and Partey have both been playing well, but Mikel Merino fits that left 8 side a lot better than either of those guys. And so, yeah, I think they messed up in not trusting some of the new additions or some of the younger players.
Right. So what I'm hearing is more Zinchenko. Mike, let's move to Everton. A game against West Ham, and at West Ham, I don't think you can go in, although West Ham hasn't had a good season, I don't think you can go in expecting that much. And there really wasn't much. It was a 0-0 draw and not much really side here. But for Everton, obviously, you want to get as many points as possible. It does seem like it's going to be a stressful season, to say the least, for Everton, no matter what. But is a draw here against West Ham good? I know a lot of the other results kind of went against us, with Ipswich getting a win and Wolves getting their win. But all things considered, against West Ham, who certainly have the more talent, 0-0, are you happy with it? Are you content? How are you feeling after this one?
It's okay. The result's fine. The performance was far from satisfactory. It was really poor. Didn't create anything. Deitch is similar, I guess, in Arteta, where he sticks with his guys. He doesn't have the luxury of having anybody on the bench to go to, so it's kind of out of necessity to stick with those guys. But he's still to blame for it in some situations. Dwight McNeil wasn't available this game, so that takes out one of our 2 creators, really. We put Decore back up in the 10, which we saw a lot of last year, and we're not fans of. And we were quickly reminded of why we were not fans of Decore in an attacking position. He doesn't have that part of his game. It's not him. He was in on goal once, really fluffed his lines. Would have liked to see Ndiaye come into that 10 role and someone else on the left wing, whether that's Jack Harrison playing a little bit out of position or trying someone else, messing with the tactics. Having Decore at the 10 is just kills it, and it puts Ndiaye on an island on the left wing where he's really not able to create much, even though he tried. It got shaky too. West Ham were not good. I won't give them any credit. They were poor as well, and they don't have any excuse to be with some of the players they have in that squad. Paqueta looked like shit, but they made it scary late. They forced 2 saves out of Pickford. The last one he saved on Danny Ings was world class. If you haven't seen that highlight, go take a look. Literally saved the point in the 92nd minute or so off a crazy deflection. World-class piece of goalkeeping. But if that's what it's coming down to, it's a scary sight as an Everton fan.
Yeah, I think Dwight McNeil is going to be somebody that has to be there and has to be fit for Everton throughout the rest of the season, because it really is just him and Ndiaye. And if you only have one, I mean, defensively, it's pretty easy to shut down Everton if there's only one person. So certainly going to need them both back and rearing to go here after the international break. Boys, obviously, big game against Jamaica. We'll have this international break. The teams can kind of reset. Both Arsenal and Everton, I think, can use this international break to get maybe some people back healthy, get some training in for kind of squad players, and get ready for a big run needed for both sides. But obviously the U.S. here needing some big results in the first competitive games of Mauricio Pochettino's era. What are you looking for here? USA, Jamaica in Kingston. Nick, I'll start with you.
I don't know. I think I want to say a win. Like I just want to see a win. I want to see them, not get overrun and get opened up on the counter. But I think more than anything, I want to see his stamp on the team. I feel like he got a pass for the last camp, but I mean, because of all the injuries, so that's fair. But I didn't really see any earmark of a Mauricio Pochettino team from that last camp. I think it was just guys out there adjusting to a new guy, which is fair. But I'm looking for specific things that he's going to do, whether that be adjusting to Jamaica's pace, whether that be playing a style that he wants with certain key players getting involved. I want to see Poch's mark on this team in this camp more than anything, and it is competitive matches. So over the 2 legs, we should be going through.
Yeah, I definitely would. I think with these players that are going to be who you think the cornerstones of the team, I want to see a bit of that system kind of evident. You can see what they're trying to do, and above all else, a win, no matter how it is. If it is a little bit ugly, that's okay. It's competitive. Just get the win. Mike, you're so good at closing these things off. Why don't you leave us with some beautiful USA Jamaica?
I don't know if you can hear me. I think I was freezing for a second. My beautiful words of wisdom: get the fucking 3 points, get a win in both legs, and don't make a fuss about it. Just go out there and play good ball. Tired of watching that BS from last camp.
All right. I mean, I think you just lit a fire under their asses. I hope they listened to this and they were rearing to go, Mike. You might have gotten them on that one. Let us know in the comments what your score predictions are.
But they have me.
Yeah, they have Mike Tracy. That's all they need. Let us know in the comments what you think is going to happen, what you want to see starting 11 is, any thoughts you have on this game, on Arsenal or Everton, and we'll make sure to let you know what we think of them. As always, subscribe, hit the notification so you see our videos, and until next time, peace.